Hello. Thank you for listening to 3 Legacies Recovery Recordings. If you enjoy our program, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to share with a friend. We're also self-supporting, so feel free to contribute to the channel through Venmo at Recovery Recordings 615. Please note that the views expressed on this podcast are solely our individual views and do not represent any official stance of any 12-step program. We are not affiliated with any specific recovery organization, and this content should not be considered as professional advice for alcoholism or addiction.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to 3 Legacies Recovery Recordings Podcast. I'm your host, Paul. Today is, September 23rd, 2025, and this is episode 69. You can reach us on our email address, which is plural, recoveryrecordings615@yahoo.com, and you can send us talks or any kind of suggestions, comments, whatever you want to do. It's all welcomed. You can also find us. We have a private Facebook page, which is 3 Legacies Recovery Recordings Podcast. Get on there and send us a request. We'd love to have you join us on there. We put new updates or whatever on the Facebook page. You can also find us on Audible, Spotify, iHeartRadio, other major platforms. We got some cool stuff coming on over the next couple weeks. Tomorrow we have, which is Amy D from Louisville, Kentucky. We're going to be doing steps 2 and 3. I think we're calling the episode, what does it say? However inadequate, sufficient enough to make the approach. Something along those lines. And super excited about that. Tonight's episode, I've been waiting on. I've been waiting on to do this for quite some time. How this whole thing started. Well, me and Judy L from Westminster, Colorado, had started a tradition series. We called it Traditions in All Our Affairs. And then also me and Juanita started another episode, Juanita's from Santa Fe, New Mexico. We started another one called Traditions in Our Family Lives. And we ended around the same time where we have Traditions 11 and 12 left. I think me and Judy actually did 11 before, but we're gonna go over it again, 11 and 12. So I'm welcoming the two of them tonight together. So we have Judy L from Westminster, Colorado, and Juanita U from Santa Fe, New Mexico. How you doing, ladies?
Hi, Paul.
Yeah. Probably should have did that separately so y'all could do it one at a time, right? Yeah. How y'all doing?
Pretty good tonight, thanks, Paul. This is Judy.
Okay. Juanita, how's it going?
Yeah. It's going pretty well, thank you. Yeah. It's nice to be on here with you and be on with Judy.
What fun, huh?
So y'all have known each other
Judy's one of my favorite people. I've known her for forever.
What, 20 or 30 years?
Forever.
Yep.
Nice.
Yeah, the important years.
Yeah.
Yes.
In the Denver area, or what was it? Would y'all meet in the Fellowship of the Spirit, or what?
Mm-hmm. Fellowship of the Spirit. We met we met these people at Fellowship of the Spirit many years ago, and we have been floating in and out of each other's lives ever since.
Nice.
Had to have been. I don't know if you were at the first one. We were at the first one, but
we were too. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've been. It's been 33 years, I think. We haven't known each other. However, throughout the years, we've come to know each other. Yeah.
That's absolutely true.
Yeah.
You know, Fellowship of the Spirit started some time ago, and we were all kind of new to this whole process, but enjoying the collective feeling of being together, and then gradually got to know inside the skin kind of thing, It didn't happen overnight or automatically, but it happened steadily, that we have been around each other in more than Fellowship of the Spirit, in different states occasionally, and sometimes on different podiums together, that kind of thing.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Judy and her husband Lou came down to Santa Fe. It's been a long time, but you came down and stayed with us for a weekend.
We did.
Yeah,
We
that was a
did.
treat.
It was so much fun. We loved being down there. Their group celebrated an anniversary with an event, so we hightailed it down there because it's within driving distance from here. That's pretty nice.
Nice.
So yeah, it was like, we're going to go visit our friends.
Nice.
It was great. Yeah, we always
And
like to have people come and
hospitable.
visit.
Oh, yeah, so fortunate.
Yeah.
You know, we live a fortunate life.
Amen. Yeah.
No matter what happens, we're still living a fortunate life
Yeah. Thank God.
in the middle of all of that
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
And now we get to know you, Paul. I'm not in Nashville, so I haven't met you in person,
Yeah.
but we've had lots of conversations.
Yeah, we've known some of the same people. I've had some
Yep.
some buddies from my home group come to Fellowship of the Spirit. I would love to go next year, but I'm not going to be able to. I have another engagement I have to take care of that same weekend. But I like how Juanita had
You
mentioned.
know the weekend changed, right?
I think what is it? June? Is it this week?
Yes, in June.
Yeah. A buddy of mine. I wish I could go. I'm DJing a wedding that weekend. I'm already under contract. Yeah.
Well,
I like how
Yeah,
Juanita
yeah.
had mentioned in the past, like what we call home group. She calls Fellowship of the Spirit out there. She calls that her home conference. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it
Years
feels like
ago,
that.
yeah, well, years ago, I was going up there, and I said, Tom and I were talking, and I said, you know how we have a home group? And he goes, yeah. I said, I think that Fellowship of the Spirit is our home conference, and I think a lot of us have a quote unquote home conference.
Yeah.
One where we know people, we feel comfortable with people, we get fed, and to me, that's what's so important about, be it the home group or the home conference. It's a place where I get fed, just like having a sponsor. I get fed. Because when you do this stuff and you have a lot of sponsees and you do a lot of service work, you get, you give, and you give, which is a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
Years ago, I think it was Johnny Harris who said, we come in takers. We take, and if we don't learn to give, we will die.
Mhm.
And so it's important that we do this, that we give. That's what we do. That's the foundation of our recovery. However, if I'm not open to receiving and refilling and replenishing my spirit, then I'm going to have nothing to give.
Yeah.
So that's a place. This home conference is a place where I go and get fed, and
Nice.
I haven't always gone up there a willing participant.
Nice.
I like that concept. It's like the refilling of a well. You need water to live, but you've got to sometimes make sure that your well is going to be refilled.
Yeah, I love that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because you can't draw when you run dry.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's awesome. For the listeners,
Go
go ahead.
ahead.
No, good. Well, okay. I was for the listeners. If you're just tuning in, we have Juanita is a al-anon member. She's member al-anon. I think 39 years. Is that right, Juanita?
Yeah,
39
years now. Yeah.
And Judy is a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. How long have you been in AA, Judy?
43 years.
43 years. Nice. And so what we're going to do is the format we're going to do is I'm going to read the short form. Juanita is going to read the one. You only have the short? Is there just one form, one way?
We just have one. Yeah.
Yes. Juanita is going to be reading the al-anon tradition, and then we're going to have Judy read the long form. So, y'all want to go ahead and get rolling with them?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And you ready?
Yeah. So, I'll start off by just the short form. So here's the Alcoholics Anonymous short form of Tradition 11. It says, our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, and films. All right. Juanita, you want to go?
Yeah. So Al-Anon's 11th tradition reads like this. Our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. So far, it's the same. We
Yeah.
need always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, here's the addition, TV, and films. And then we continue and we say, we need guard with special care the anonymity of all AA members. When Al-Anon did their traditions, we already had TV. When AA came up with theirs, I don't think TV was really, an ongoing thing.
Gotcha. Interesting. All right, Judy.
Okay, tradition 11. We're not as thoughtful as the Al-Anons. We don't even mention our relations. There you go, long form, which I think in most cases, the long form of the traditions is much more clear and much more inclusive than the short form. Our relations with the general public ought to be characterized by personal anonymity. We think AA ought to avoid sensational advertising.
Nice.
Our names and pictures as AA members ought not be broadcast, filmed, or publicly printed. Our public relations should be guided by the principle of attraction rather than promotion. There is never need to praise ourselves. We feel it better to let our friends recommend us.
Nice.
There's a lot. That's pretty chewy when you think about it.
Yeah.
I think I love it. I think it's great.
I do too.
I especially love that last sentence, Judy. There's never any need to praise ourselves. We feel it better to let our friends recommend us.
Yeah.
Well, isn't it funny that we've got some folks in administrative circles who would like us to do big time praising of ourselves with former awards and things like that. And it's so funny because our tradition specifically says, don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'll tell you one thing I really like too is that it mentions our public relations policy. It kind of goes in depth in that, because there's a lot of times you'll hear, in my personal experience, people have a misunderstanding on what that means, and they feel like inside the rooms of AA we shouldn't be promoting AA, right? And now at the end of the day, I mean, we promote AA within AA. We talk about what the next upcoming event is. We talk about whatever's going on within the area or whatever, But people a lot of times think they misread that, and they don't realize they're talking about our public relations policies, right?
Yeah, I think you're right. Go ahead, Judy.
I was going to say, and then we get into what the heck does public relations mean? And that's a serious question, because we have to let people know we're here. So it's fairly contradictory, like so many things in AA are. We need publicity, but we can't do publicity. Right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I'm going to stick with talking about AA for a few minutes before we talked about maybe some of the more broad looks at some of those traditions. But if we've got here's a suggestion. Think about this as, what if we have a billboard? Everybody's horrified. A billboard? What if it says something to the effect of, are you unhappy with how things are because of your drinking? Alcoholics Anonymous might help.
Yeah.
Is that promotion? Some people think it is. Or is that information? So Australia is doing a big billboard and other kinds of ways to reach out with information that might get people to think about their drinking without saying, we're not making fantastic charges about what AA can do. It's like, AA might help if you think you might be in trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's also that sensational, right? Like it,
Right.
They're saying that,
Right.
they
So do we-
no.
do we, it's like the difference between using your last name in a circle of friends in AA or a circle of places where you're known, and then not using it when you're being recorded or anywhere publicly.
Yeah.
We've done buses where we've said, "Are you concerned with someone's drinking? Are you unhappy because somebody's drinking has affected you? Al-Anon might help, and just the resource number. I think that's quite the valid thing. AA is much more known throughout the world than Al-Anon is.
Yeah.
And it's very sad when you think about it, because for every alcoholic, how many people have been affected by living with the alcoholic, by the drinking? I mean, it's just, they used to say, 8 people. Now, I don't know, it might be more, I have no idea. But that's a lot of people. Our Al-Anon rooms ought to be full to overflowing. And yet, I think it's harder to reach the family members than it is to reach the alcoholic themselves.
Wow.
I totally agree with you. So we're not going to do flashy advertising or promises or immodest claims about what we can do, but we offer that if you want to check it out, maybe you know somebody. That's the people who tend to be getting here that I'm noticing.
Yeah.
When the young people get here, what I noticed is they usually know somebody who was in AA.
Yeah.
So we're our own attraction.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I absolutely agree with you. Juanita, right now, we're not going, but when we went to corrections institutions trying to help them have AA meetings, because they think there's about an 80% problem rate among incarcerated people. That's pretty high, and most of them don't have AA meetings, although a couple are now catching on to, they can do a hybrid with Zoom and let people in without all of the fuss about security. But I've often thought that we really need Al-Anon, because I can remember a guy saying at a meeting, I'm going to get out and I want to be sober, but they're planning a party for me the day I get out.
Mm.
And my wife is as alcoholic as I am. And I'm not going to get any support at home.
Yeah.
And I've thought for a long time that so many people getting out of prison, which is a particular love of mine, doing our work in prisons, but I've often thought that Al-Anon would be really powerful there, because so many of them, most of us aren't alcoholic in a world by ourselves. Most of us have families, and they come to visit, and some of them are worse than the drunk that's in jail,
Absolutely.
That's
What brought me to Al-Anon, Judy, Paul, was the fact that Tom went to the treatment center, and when they were doing intake, they said to me, they didn't say we suggest you go. They said, we require you to go to at least 3 meetings of Al-Anon, or we're not going to let him out of here. But when I heard that, I thought, well, you can just keep this sorry SOB as far as I'm concerned, I've been trying to get rid of him for a long time, and he was my obsession. There was no getting rid of him. And I went to my first family day, and the counselor said, she asked me if I'd gone to Al-Anon, and of course I had all sorts of excuses, as we family members can have. And she said this to me. She said, he cannot go home to an old idea.
Nice.
Yeah, absolutely. I suggest you go to Al-Anon. And I didn't know what she meant. I really had no clue. And of course, in those days, I couldn't ask, what do you mean? because
Right.
I couldn't admit that I didn't know everything, you know? And what it did for me was that it sounded very ominous, and I really felt that I couldn't go back to a family day if I had not gone to a meeting. So God uses my defects of character all the time,
Mm,
all the time.
thank God.
And I really believe God said, yeah, you've got it's all about, for you, it's all about how you look. So you go ahead and go to Al-Anon, because you need to come back next week and look like this incredible, supportive, loving wife, which I really was not. But it was all about how they would see me, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's really interesting, looking at this tradition, because clearly, I think that woman must have been doing this for a long time, because she hit me. She hit me in a way that she must have known that would get me to go. And so I did. And so, was it promotion? I don't know if it was promotion, but it certainly did make me fearful and made me anxious. And so I went, you know, and I went and I stayed in Al-Anon. Again, God uses all my character defects. I stayed in Al-Anon because I thought these people at that meeting needed me. And so I kept going to Al-Anon. And I was not an attractive package. You know, we've always got a message to carry. And my message in those first years, I mean, for quite some time, for many years, was not a good message. It was not an attractive message. It was a mess of a message. It really was. And this tradition, because Judy, Paul, and I have been talking about applying the traditions in our family life, you know. And
Yep.
so for me, with this tradition, you know, the question for me is, am I living in such a way that how I live with my family, how I show up, is it attractive? Am I demonstrating the principles of our program? Am I doing that? Because for me, that's what has always been attractive. And I think that's one of the reasons, Judy, I was so excited about doing this with you, because you are one of those people who demonstrates the principles of our program, you know, integrity, you know, showing up, and just to name a few. And so, am I doing this with my family? Am I somebody that when I speak, they listen? Not because what I say is so wonderful, but because I've shown up in their life. And I got to tell you that as a mother, as a daughter, before coming to Al-Anon and in my first several years, I was not showing up in anybody's life. I was not attractive. If I had said to them, you know, you ought to go to Al-Anon, which we did, we made our kids go to Alateen, and they didn't like it, and but they went. And the only thing that I can say that did was to give them a place that they knew where they could go if they had problems.
Nice.
But I was not an attractive package, and it took years. It took years. And I think one of the first ways that it happened was I wanted to make amends to my two boys, to my two stepsons. And my sponsor said, no, she says, not yet. She says, you cannot make amends until you are showing up differently in their lives. Now, I was showing up differently in their lives. However, I was still a ways away from really showing up with love, with attention to them, being emotionally present. So I had a long ways to go. So I began to pay attention to that, and I started showing up in their lives. And when I finally made amends to them, it was because I was different. You know, I was different. I was demonstrating the principles of this program. And so that, I think, is really important, be it in our family or be it in general public, be it in our meetings. It doesn't matter where it is.
Absolutely. I love that. Because if we're going to try to be attractive to those around us. When we're new, we're still trying to get over our own nonsense, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you can't transfer wisdom to somebody or serenity if you haven't got it.
Yeah.
But we're trying to promote something before. Yeah, boy, that's like throwing rocks down a cliff, right?
No kidding. Absolutely.
So, the things that kind of come to me that were things I could grasp when I was new was to start being honest with everything I did with my children. You and I are both family people. We both have kids. We both have relationships. Paul, do you have children?
Nope. Not any, I have two stepchildren, but none personal children.
That's okay. I mean, they're your kids.
I have,
Yeah.
I have a 22-year-old.
Yeah, we're not doing blood tests here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Not in AA. You can't.
Yeah.
Not in AA.
Yeah.
But anyway, what I know is that the things that stuck at first before I could make sense of any of it was, I've got to be honest or I'm not going to make it.
Mm-hmm.
So I started being honest at home, like biting my tongue. I can't lie. And the kids would run through the house saying, "Don't let Mom answer the phone. She'll tell the truth." And that was pretty funny. And but then I began to see that among the amends that I would have to start living to show up differently was to give those kids that I had. I wasn't married, so it's mostly about kids and family. But could I give them the right to be different? Can I give them the right to be wrong? Or do I have to keep criticizing them because now I think I've got the answer?
Mm.
This sense of promotion in my family just really doesn't work if I'm still a jerk.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
Absolutely.
And,
yep.
Knowing that I had been an absentee parent for a number of years, leaving them to grow and raise themselves, I felt pretty clearly like I didn't have the right to come in like the military mom and set down all the rules because, man, they'd been doing it without me for a really long time. Mm. And I had the sense that maybe the best I could do was treat them a little more like sponsors, like I was a sponsor, and try not to be advising or promoting anything because they'd only run in the opposite direction. We had one that was willing to go to Alateen, and we took him for a while. He's the one that's still fighting a little bit of alcohol stuff, but I don't think he's a member of AA or needs to be. I think he's one of those people who needs to probably not drink, but I don't think he's an alcoholic. And I see those as different things.
I love that.
But I had experiences that I could share with them, and less criticism. Again, I had 4 kids that had raised themselves. They weren't that old, but they had been raising themselves all along. And then unfortunately, what I did was I went to meetings every night, so I'd put them in bed and I'd go out. Mm-hmm. Just like I did when I had my favorite home bar. So I eventually wound up having to make amends for my sober behavior as much as my drunk behavior. Mm. But if I'm going to talk about interpersonal anonymity, am I willing to keep their privacy and their confidentiality as a sacred trust? Mm-hmm. Mm. Because nobody wants to be told about their religious or their spiritual practices by somebody who can't keep their flippin' mouth shut.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
So, we don't automatically get sober and suddenly we're struck like saints. At least that wasn't my experience. Maybe it was for others, but it certainly wasn't for mine.
Yeah.
And, it was a long time. We were pretty broke. I was still pretty boy crazy. So I was still doing a lot of that late meeting stuff and things like that. But little by little, I think what I got was the wisdom of the meeting shared even when I couldn't take direction, if that makes sense.
Mm.
People talking about what they were doing, how they were handling things. I go, oh, wow. And my kids were pretty evil. They were at that age, and they hadn't been parented, and they had an absentee dad, and we had no money, and they were like a little band of thieves, and we were not a very pretty picture for a couple of years, but it was AA members that kept encouraging me that we were going to be okay.
Mm.
We were going to be okay. In fact, AA people were so kind to me. They came and they patched holes in the walls and grouted windows that were missing and put windows back in and they just showed up. One guy showed up for a Christmas that I was hosting. I got sober in August, so I was a few months trying hard to do everything that I used to do before I got sober, right? Trying to do it all sober so that there weren't any changes in my life.
Mm.
And one guy offered to come and be there with me for my family holiday. He was about 3 months more sober than me. And he came and sat on a chair so frozen he couldn't talk. And everybody kept saying, who's the guy in the corner? Who's the guy in the corner? And he was there, and I'd look over and I'd think, I was like my personal guardian. But neither one of us knew how to participate or, host the family thing or be, delightful, entertaining family members yet.
Mm.
It was pretty funny when I look back on it. But what a kindness. What a kindness he did to let himself be that uncomfortable so that I had a sober friend at a party.
Mm.
That's beautiful, Judy.
Yeah.
Isn't that
is. Yeah. And what a demonstration of somebody who's so new. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That really is. That I love that. That really is nice.
Yeah.
I have, I was pretty recalcitrant. I was pretty arrogant. I was unwilling to take direction, but I got an awful lot of juice out of people and how they demonstrated things differently to me. And that's maybe what we're talking about with an 11th tradition.
Yeah, I'll tell you, one thing that comes to mind, that's came to mind every time we do an episode with either one of y'all is that, how important the recovery portion of this is first, right? And, like we were talking one of the last episodes was that 7th step awareness, for me to have the experience that like, I'm not the end all be all, there are individuals that live in my house with me that have their own desires, have their own wants, their own wishes. This isn't Paul's universe, right? This is God's universe. How can I help? Right. And like, if I don't go through the recovery portion of the, and have some kind of awakening and have a loving God available to me, everything we're talking about right now is completely out of the picture, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Can I do a personal rant for about 2 minutes?
Sure.
Okay. Tradition 11 talks about anonymity in our lives, but I notice that we all have kind of gotten, we get an addiction going to the shared celebrity of somebody who's an important person, who's a famous person. And I think it's really critical that not just my family members, not just the people I'm around at meetings, but especially aware that when somebody is a celebrity or a known quantity or a famous anything, musician, actor, actress, politician, that we don't talk about them or make them so special or talk about what they share so that they aren't free to come to a meeting or to say who they are and talk about themselves with that intimacy that we do within the program.
Nice.
And I've noticed that a lot of us really love fame enough. We don't have any of our own, so we try to borrow it from people that come to AA. Yes, it was at the meeting Saturday and what they said. And I think that I feel so strongly about this because I think we're taking somebody's very life in our hands when we do that kind of thing.
Absolutely. Judy, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's all I just want to say. I think it's a life and death thing. How dare we?
Nice.
I think you're absolutely right. And the thing is that if we do it with somebody like that, you know full well we're doing it on a smaller level. You know, because it doesn't just fall into that category. You know, and why it's so important, as far as I'm concerned, is that if somebody hears me talking about somebody, however that is, and I think it can be good stuff as well as things that are not so good. Okay, it all falls under the category of gossip, and the problem with that is that if people hear this, they're going to start wondering, is this a person that I can talk to who's going to hold my secrets, that is going to hold what I share with them in a sacred manner? And I think that they're not going to believe that that's the case. And if somebody doesn't believe that I can hold on to something and keep it sacred and hold it just within me, then I'm not going to be somebody that somebody's going to want to fifth step with. And I'm certainly not going to be somebody who someone might want to ask to sponsor them, to take them through the steps or what have you. And if I truly believe that 12th stepping, carrying the message, is vital and crucial to my own recovery, then I'm going to be in trouble. I'm going to be in big trouble.
Absolutely. And what if you get a new person at that meeting and they hear you talking about somebody else? How honest will they feel they can be?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, there's a couple. One of them is just a story about a woman who had a famous name, and she was so famous that she couldn't go to a meeting. And so she had a meeting with her sponsor and a little group of ladies in a place that was secret. And it was secret enough that although I knew every person in her group, I never had the slightest idea what was shared or said at any of those meetings, or even when the meeting was. Because we don't get to do that with another person, and we forget that. We forget that, it's for every member's well-being. Now, and the difference for me, we talked about there's differences from what we think of an idea and what is meant. If I'm not an anorexic, anybody that sees me would know that. But I've sponsored a couple of anorexics, and they know that if I find that I'm sponsoring another person with a dual problem, and I don't know anything about that problem, it's really helpful that I am able to give them somebody else's name where they can share with somebody that has what they have. So at the same time that we don't share anybody's stories, it's really helpful that we know what people are so that we can help somebody who has a similar kind of thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I could pass somebody who was an anorexic or a cutter, or somebody who had a secret whatever addiction.
Mental health
I
stuff.
could, whatever it is, that we could help them talk to somebody with whom they could share the identity of their other stuff in a way where they would understand, because I'm pretty limited.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot about one thing, but I don't know everything about that one thing. and thank God for God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
It's
But
very true.
I don't know anything about anorexia.
I hear you.
Mm-hmm.
Same here. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Is how do y'all
And I respect that. That's a life-threatening thing too.
Thank God. Yeah.
I've got a couple more things though,
Okay.
just on this, if you don't mind, Paul,
Absolutely.
if
sure.
I may.
Yeah, absolutely.
What Judy said holds true with our family. If my kids hear me talking about the other kids in a way that is sharing personal details that has been shared with me, they're not going to want to talk to me, and it's going to cause problems in the family home. It really is, and it's the same old thing about gossip. It doesn't matter if it's true or if it's not. It's not a good thing. I mean, because my family won't want to tell me anything. And if that happens to me, then I'm going to be sitting outside my family. They're going to and they're going to be talking about me. And they're going to be talking about how, yeah, you can't tell her anything because she's a gossip. And I've heard that. I mean, I've heard this from people I sponsor talking about their families, and it's not good. One of the things I have to remember is that I have to speak for myself. I can't speak for my family. I have to keep the focus on me. Mm-hmm. And one of the things about this tradition is that I believe that one of its greatest attributes, if I may, is one of humility and of equality. And the soul wants equality. The soul wants trust. The soul wants togetherness. The soul wants unity. The ego wants to be in charge. Yeah. The ego wants to be safe. The ego wants to be better than. Let me have all the attention. And this tradition speaks to how, you're not in this thing for the attention. You're in this thing because you have a message to carry. And can you carry that message and maintain your personal anonymity? And so am I living my life in a way that is attractive? Can I provide love, support, understanding to others in my family or otherwise without violating their privacy or their trust? And I think that's what this is all about. I have to be able to hold someone's trust and maintain their privacy, not only with who they are, hold that privacy with everything that they've shared with me. Yeah. And if I want respect and if I want courtesy, I have to give it. I have to give a safe place. I can't insist on my way. And I just have to remember that ego, that need to be somebody, that has to be put aside. I'm not going to be of service if I'm constantly wanting my ego to prevail. If I'm trying to be somebody, which is crazy, trying to be somebody or wanting to be somebody in an anonymous fellowship, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
But we're all so often trying to be exactly that.
Oh, yeah. Which brings me to something I was about to bring up was, my personal experience, and I had a buddy he went through the same situation or same stuff, was like, when I first started learning these traditions, I was using them to be like the freaking AA police. You know what I mean? Like now I got just enough ammunition to tell everybody else they're freaking doing it wrong, right? And it'd be like some petty stuff, like where I'd see someone on like a public timeline post, something about AA, and it could be something so petty. This person's got like a 30-day chip or whatever, right? And here I am at like, 6 years of sobriety or whatever, and I'm sitting there like huffing and puffing, like putting myself on a pedestal, like looking down on this person, right? To where it was like my character defects are tenfold worse than what this person's doing, right? Yeah, so it's funny how like the ego can use this stuff for whatever, right? It's just enough ammunition for me to separate myself from somebody else, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And we so often justify what we do, and sometimes there's a lot of justification to cross those lines.
Yeah.
It's like, have I got enough principles for Judy's personality?
Yeah.
I don't need to worry about yours.
Yeah.
I got enough of a battle with mine.
Oh my Lord.
So
I get that.
There was a time in my marriage to him, my sober him, and I've been married now for a while, and there was a time when we weren't liking each other, and we went from being like this model a couple with sponsees and service commitments and doing the dance, and to the place where we weren't barely speaking to each other at all. And we went through a very difficult time. I've talked about this publicly. What I need to say about that is I can only talk about me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't ever get the opportunity. The opportunity is not the right word. I don't have the right to talk about it from his point of view. Or even talk about it from my angry point of view when we were in trouble. So I wound up getting using 3 people, all 3 of them people that Juanita would know, but she would never have heard anything from them. And they were all out of town people. And I shared where I was at with somebody because we are entitled to anonymity when we're having difficulties with people as well as when we like them. We're entitled to that. And I've seen a lot of relationships go bad, and then we start bad-mouthing or talking about the person that we're disenchanted with. And we made it through thanks to good sponsorship and a heavy dose of God in the middle of that. But you would never want to hear anybody get up and talk about their relationship and how the other person was so wrong because the other person isn't there. And it does so much damage. I've always liked what Bill says somewhere. I don't remember whether it's in the 12 traditions or not, where he says something to the effect of, we can only relate another person's experience if they say it's okay to do so. And it's like before I tell this story about you and you don't know I'm going to say it, would I be able to tell it if you were in the room?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Chances are not, So I just think, whether it's anonymity of our kids or our family members, and we've all got lots of stories. Everybody I know loves stories because it's one of the things we're fed here in Alcoholics Anonymous and 12-step groups and al-anon. We're fed that anonymity and it being such a spiritual thing because it requires what Juanita said. It requires humility, gratitude, and maybe even the willingness to serve others.
Absolutely.
How do we do that without taking credit, we're in this thing with other people. We have this fabulous community. And then we want to go around and kind of throw stones at people. That doesn't make any sense. But it's a thing a lot of people do, I think. A lot of families do, and maybe we just pick up a habit.
Yeah, I think you're right. Wow. And the 12th tradition really hammers that, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But yeah.
I think both. Should we move to the 12th tradition?
Yeah, that's a great lead into it. So I'll read the short form real quick. This is the Alcoholics Anonymous 12th tradition short form. It says, anonymity is the spiritual foundation of all our traditions, ever reminding us to place principles before personalities.
Al-Anon's reads, anonymity is the spiritual foundation of all our traditions, ever reminding us to place principles above personalities. One word difference.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love that.
Bill Wax is eloquent on the 12th tradition long form, and I love it. And finally, we of Alcoholics Anonymous believe that the principle of anonymity has an immense spiritual significance. It reminds us that we are to place principles before personalities, that we are actually to practice a genuine humility, this to the end that our great blessings may never spoil us, that we shall forever live in thankful contemplation of him who presides over us all.
Wow.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Isn't that wonderful?
Thankful
Yeah, it really is. It really is. I've always loved the long forms of AA's 12 traditions. I think they're beautiful.
Man.
Yeah.
Well,
and that one especially so.
They tried hard to fit it onto a window, window shades, and I think that they lost it, and they lost some of the meaning.
Yeah.
When we did that.
It makes it simplifies it, and it does lose some of the meaning. The one thing about it about this tradition that really gets me is where it says that anonymity is the spiritual foundation of all our traditions.
Yeah.
So here they've taken all those traditions that we've been talking about, and they're wrapping it up here, and they're saying all our traditions are based on the spiritual foundation of this anonymity, this thing we call anonymity, which is put your ego aside, put your need to be grandiose, your need to be in charge, large and in charge, and just set it aside, because this is about being humble enough, human. And when I say humble, what I mean is, with defining the word humility, I think is to be right sized.
Amen.
Right sized. Know exactly where I fit in the world and in God's world and in relationship to God and my fellow man. And there's no need for me to bolster my ego in any way when I have a good, comfortable, deep, conscious contact with the power that is greater than me.
Amen.
That, above all else, I think is so important. And Paul, I'd mentioned it to you that there was no way I was even going to be interested in the traditions if I didn't have a sound base in the 12 steps of recovery.
Yeah.
And by that, I mean having gone through those 12 steps and having an awakened spirit.
Yeah.
And I think without that awakened spirit, I'm not going to be able to pay attention to the fact that my ego has to be placed and given to God, because that's the only way it's going to be in check.
It's a safe space.
And that is a safe space.
Yeah.
Because I need to have that in a safe place and in check, because otherwise I don't have a sound spiritual foundation.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to be able to adhere, to follow, to even want to follow these traditions.
Yeah.
And I'm certainly not going to give 2 cents for unity, because it's all going to be about me.
Amen. Amen. Judy?
Another aspect of the 12th tradition that I'm really fond of, and I hadn't thought about it for a really long time, and then one day it occurred to me that one of the things that anonymity does when practiced, not just about who knows my last name, that's the smallest, right? We all agree that's the smallest effect and piece. It's not my last name that's the problem. It's my ego, keeping my my desire for attention and importance that gets in the way. So the 12th tradition is also about humility, and the humility to give up my desire for stardom, for recognition, admiration, attention, applause. There's simply not enough applause in the world for all the applause any one of us wants. And so the 12th tradition chops that away. It's like, skip the applause, do it without being caught. Skip the applause, don't be known. You don't need to go save the drunks by telling everybody in the newspaper what your experience is, or you don't need to join. There was a big march on Washington 2 or 3 years ago, and they were all saying we're coming out of the closet, so to take the shame away from addiction. And they had all kinds of important people speaking and announcing their membership. Thank God most of the papers didn't come, and they understood our tradition maybe better than we did. But what I think this idea of anonymity does is it equalizes the playing field. The members of 12-step groups, regardless of their economics, their legal, their employment, their status, as an individual. So if I got my way, I'd be Dr. Somebody important, or fantasy horror author famous, or a famous actor writing a book about my famous actor friends, or famous at meetings. But instead, we get to share in a meeting where people might be unemployed, out of prison, toothless, bankrupt, homeless, all at the same meeting.
Wow.
And we find an equality between us when we're out of hope and out of luck. And maybe we got some hope and some luck and we can share it. I personally prefer the anonymity that keeps professions and status away from each of us, so that we can just be another member of Alcoholics Anonymous or Al-Anon, nothing greater and nothing lesser, another member.
Wow.
Because it's so easy to do envy and jealousy and competition, all the stuff that flourishes so easily. It flourishes in work spaces. What if I'm there to just serve my job? It creates chaos in my families. Any one of us that's got more than one sibling knows that there's always jealousy, competitiveness, and attention seeking. They love me more than they love you. They love you more than they do me. Watch anybody when the will is being discussed, If we don't see each other as God's other children, as just the kids of a loving higher power, God isn't going to give a flip what I did for a living. But I'm called in this tradition to act with love in the protection of others around me. So I don't think it's about protection of me. It's as much as anything the protection of the program and others.
Wow, it's crazy.
And don't you love that last part about, now that you got a little smidgen of humility, Judy, try thankful contemplation.
Well, it's crazy. Like, I'll tell you, thankful contemplation is like when you really get like the vastness of everything that this body of work that they left us, right? It's just like, how can you not be in thankful contemplation just by even starting to understand some of these principles, right? And how important they are to hold all this together, right? Something as simple as like, like what you were just talking about. I mean, tradition 12, the principles, it pretty much is all of them, right? So if you look at like, I mean, how many times, if you look at just self-supporting by itself, right? Like think about, our home group supports our GSR, right? So our GSR maybe have someone, maybe there's someone in the group that's, isn't financially stable enough to actually go to the area assemblies, right? Well, that's, what we've done is Alcoholics Anonymous has tried to create a way to get the bypass every bit of that. Like, just because your finances might not be as better as good as the next person, you may be more qualified than the next person, right? So what they've done is they've just created this, it's a society that just supports itself, right? And if it's cool how spiritual it all is, right? It's just unbelievable just how it all comes together. Like it's crazy how I can listen to this stuff and understand it more and more. And every time I get into a conversation like this, I just sit in awe. It's like, holy crap! Like just how big it all is, right?
It's so big.
I was just as you were talking, Paul, it just made me think of the story of when Bill went to get funding from what's his name? They had the Rockefeller, and Rockefeller said, "Nah, I'm not going to give you any money." And all I can think is that even though we didn't have our traditions then, that I think had to have been, what do I know? But I just think that must have played a part in Bill's mind when he wrote the traditions, knowing that had to have been a principle, like, oh my God, we have this, we can't depend on anybody else. And of course, the big name, and all of that stuff, and the big money. And it's like, we have to keep this thing simple, and we have to keep it here so that we don't let all of these outside influences come and affect us and tear us apart. Because I don't know about you guys, but I see my home group right now is going through some group conscience stuff, and boy, you can just see the tensions beginning to build, and we've been together a long time, but everybody has their thoughts, everybody has their ideas. And the good thing is, you talked about placing principles above personalities, is that there are some people who want to rush it, because it's nicer when you rush it, because then you can kind of almost bully your way through and get what you want. And the group consensus is that we're going to take our time.
Nice.
We're going to talk about this as long as we have to talk about this, so that we're all in some form of agreement. Judy, I'm sure you remember Don P. talking about, he said at one point, he said, if everybody's not in if everybody's not in consensus, then we haven't talked about it enough. And we have to talk about things so that we so we understand each other, so our point is put across, and so we can all get the same information. Because what we really want is, we want a consensus so that we can come and stay together. This what does it say? I just lost my place here. Principles, we say principles above personalities. It does, and we got some big personalities. Even the quietest person who doesn't say a peep has a personality. And I'm watching some of our people going, well, everybody has to talk. Even the ones who don't talk, they have to talk. And it's like, nobody says they have to talk. You don't have to talk if they don't want to. That's their prerogative to either talk or not. And our principle is mutual respect. Mutual respect. And boy, it's just so important. We are a fellowship of equals. And because I think we're so human, we forget all the time.
Amen.
We don't have pedestals. There's no forcing my will. I can't be forced. I don't know best. Nobody knows best. God is in charge. And this tradition for me is a reminder that we have to take all of our traditions and apply them to anything that's going on. And because I'm sure you, Paul, and you, Judy, have been in group consciences where somebody wants to apply just one tradition. Oh, but this tradition says,
Yeah.
Yeah, but if we just look at that, we're stepping on the toes of this one or several
Yeah.
these ones,
Yeah.
So
Yep.
and can I practice tolerance? Love and tolerance is our code. Can I be a loving, tolerant person? We don't have to like each other, or we don't have to agree, but we do have to be able to respect and be. Well, let me put it this way: they don't have to do that. I have to be able to respect and be tolerant and offer courtesy and love to others, regardless of whether somebody is giving that back to me or not,
Yeah.
including my family.
Well,
Right. Right. When I look at these, this is the culmination. When I think of them as a set, the traditions start with a goal of unity. And then it has the next 10 traditions talk about the ways we can either impact it positively or negatively.
Mm.
Like the mind your own business tradition and the pull your own weight in all of your affairs tradition. 7, like Paul was saying, do I hold my own emotionally? Do I contribute my share physically, financially, spiritually? Am I self-supporting? Sexually, in all the ways in which I am in my family, how am I self-supporting? Do I contribute is only part of the 7th tradition, but when I'm in a group that includes my family, can I fight for unity by not doing some of those 10 different nuances of how we get off track? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And then we get to 12 and it's like, oh, and all these principles are spiritual principles. That's the part we forget. Spirituality is a set of principles.
Yeah.
Whatever your God, we examine it and look at it, and we find underneath that are spiritual principles. I love all those old-fashioned words they don't talk about so much, like service and self-sacrifice, confidentiality, humility, prudence. Don't you love that word? Prudence. Even modesty. I'm modest in what I promise. I'm modest in how I throw the name of AA around. It's so interesting that by the time we get to 12, what we're being asked to do is to serve the higher power and stop asking the higher power to serve me.
Amen. Wow. Which is humility.
And that's our general basis. That's why it's the foundation, I think, underlying all of the traditions. And some of them really are what underline our concepts too. They underline, yeah. It's bigger than, did I stop drinking? Pretty surely it's bigger than that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting because in the big book on step 12, it talks about how working with others is the foundation stone of recovery. And tradition 12, that's which is step 12, right? And then tradition 12 says that anonymity is a spiritual foundation of all our traditions. So that it's all about, a foundation, and it's a spiritual foundation all the way through. And in Al-Anon, we have 5 warranties. And the warranties have done a beautiful job of encapsulating all of our concepts. And it's a foundation. And so we really have, these 3 legacies. Both of our fellowships have these 3 legacies. And that is our foundation. What a foundation that is. My gosh.
Wow.
God, we build our spiritual home. We build our spiritual recovery. We build ourselves. We build our relationships. We build everything on this spiritual foundation.
Yeah.
It's funny. I'm sitting here thinking like how big this is compared to like I came in here with like my, with like people just tell me, Paul, you just don't do it. You just don't do it. You know what I mean? Whatever it was, they didn't like it. My family, you just don't do it, Paul. You just don't do it. And that's just, you come in here, like how important it is. Like you start seeing how, and y'all have already touched on it, how like your being has like these core needs, trust, purpose, being useful in life. There's like these core needs in your life that like you just don't even realize until you get here and you calm down for a little bit and you start, luckily some people knew more about all this than you did, so they were willing to share it with you, and they somewhat looked attractive and you was attracted to them in some ways, and they were like, hey, just go make the coffee, go make the coffee, go do this, go do that, and then like here it is years later and you're like, wow, holy crap.
Right. I've always thought that service was actually an opportunity rather than a task.
Oh,
It's an
gosh,
opportunity.
yeah. And Paul, the thing for me is that I became willing to follow and adhere to the principles of our program because I was such a mess.
Yeah.
I mean, I was creating havoc. I only knew how to live in constant chaos and crisis, and everything. My whole life was in turmoil. I was a mess. My relationships were a mess. And it was all the mistakes, all the difficulties I've had in before getting into the program and after that led me to respect, to, oh my gosh, to just, I almost said worship, but it's not worship because I don't think that's the right word. To respect and to want to uphold, that's the word I want, and to uphold, our traditions, all of our principles, and it's hit and miss, all trial and error. My worst mistakes have always led me to a deeper relationship with God and to a deeper understanding of why we have these traditions. To protect them from me, because my gosh, the havoc that I can cause is unbelievable.
Yeah. I was talking just maybe, so my home group, the third week of the month, we do the tradition of whatever the month is, right? And last week I was sharing about how, like, so, my whole, I'm 33 years old when I get sober. I come in, I'd been freaking everything you could imagine, the worst case imaginable. I come in and thank God there was some people that had, had a good understanding. Someone was making the coffee. Someone was, a treasurer. They were arranging the chairs and all that. Could you imagine like who the guy came in as if the whole thing was left up to someone like me just to get there and try to make things happen? You know what I mean? It's like unbelievable. Like just how everything was just, an unconscious amount of like self-serving. And I thought it was cute at the time, right? It's crazy.
It's funny you say that because we have people who set up our rooms and stuff, and sometimes they're late, and there's always someone who is willing to step up and set out the chairs, put out the literature, welcome somebody. And so there's always somebody willing to do that. And it's a reminder to me that it's much more important to see that something is accomplished and taken care of and comes to fruition than to get the credit.
Yeah.
And because we're so human, I think there's a tendency to like, well, that's my job, or, I did that, I started it. And I think the point is that it doesn't matter who started it. Is it coming to fruition? Is it taking place? That's the important thing. That is what we're after. And I think that's what principles above personalities amounts to. It doesn't matter whose job it was necessarily, although I believe in being accountable.
Yeah.
The point is that it's all of our job to help our fellowship, our neighbor, our fellow member to succeed and to be and do their best.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Yeah. I'm telling guys all the time, like I had a guy ask me last week, so is there any service positions available at the group? I'm like, they're taken at the moment, but that doesn't mean you can't go do it. You know what I mean? Like, you don't need to be, door. The group doesn't need to look at you as a door greeter for you to be a door greeter, right? I mean, just go,
Right.
like all kinds of stuff there is to do, and
It's not really about the title, then,
no,
is it?
no,
Juanita mentioned Don P., and he used to say that the most dangerous thing he ever did was to speak.
Yeah.
And I've heard that in my head a lot, because what he was acknowledging was the absolute pull to one's ego and sense of self to be told by 150 or 300 or 800 people how terrific you are.
Mm-hmm.
And then to go home where you're just another part of the family.
Absolutely.
And he understood that the danger of speaking and getting that kind of treatment could be soul sucking. And that we have the tools not to do that, but we have to remind ourselves how dangerous that stuff is when you get all of the recognition that we all thought we needed and deserved, right? And then you find that it's taken you right back to a place where you have to fight your defects all over again.
Yeah.
And isn't that why we can't ever not do the step work? I mean,
Right.
That's why we're called in step 10 to continuously watch. We watch not everybody else. We watch our behavior. Where have I been selfish, self-centered, dishonest? Where have I been fearful? And I better maintain my prayer and meditation so I can deepen my contact with God. Because I promise you, what I have seen and for me and about me in these 39 years is that as I get better and I get closer to God, my defects, my shortcomings, the things I could call wrong, they get much more subtle. They get smoother. So I really have
even more dangerous, don't you think?
absolutely. Yeah.
Well, it brings me
because
to
when you were new, you knew you were nuts, but now you know,
Yeah.
And here you are trying to be the example of of a good member of Alcoholics Anonymous. One of my favorite parts of the book that works for me a lot is on page 73 when it talks about the alcoholic lives a double life. He knows he wants to have a certain reputation, but knows he doesn't deserve it. And I think often it doesn't take much for me to realize that as a sober person, as a person with a relationship with God, in a 12-step program for life or for living life, that as that person, what happens is that it's really easy for me to want to be better than I am. And the one I want to demonstrate how good I am to is me. I'm selfish enough to care less because I know when I'm looking about how other people feel sometimes. But when I feel as though I'm a fraud with my own stuff, it's really a threatening kind of thing. So I quickly hide the evidence of my small, stingy mind and my stingy heart, and pretend to myself that I'm better than I am. And that's like having two personalities again, just like it was throwing fits when I was drinking. So I'll share with you a very quick little story what I mean by that. My daughter, my eldest child is a daughter, and she invited me to go to a play downtown at our big place, performance center. And we're leaving, and folks are usually kind of dressed up, and there was a girl who was there in a really cheesy dress, looked like one of those Chinese knockoff things that didn't quite fit right and was sliding off of her shoulder. And she looked young, maybe 19 or 20, and she was chunky, and the dress looked terrible, and it was the wrong color. And I looked at her and said all those things to myself that I just said to you. My daughter went over to her, touched her arm, and said, I just want you to know how pretty you look.
Oh, my gosh.
And we walked away, and I said, how could you even say that? She looked ridiculous. Was sliding over one boob. I mean, just nothing worked. And I said, how could you say that? And she looked and she said, but Mom, she really needed to feel pretty tonight. I could see it. And I felt about 1.5 inches tall.
Wow.
Realizing that one more time, I couldn't see the child's need, but I saw mine to be superior.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Great story, Judy.
Yeah. It was a powerful story in my head about what kind of person do I want to be in my life? Do I want to be a blessing in someone's life? Or is this constant ego desiring attention and superiority or whatever all going to get the upper hand?
Wow.
What kind of life did I want to have? And I am better. Some days better than others.
Yeah. Those situations, those little things like that are what really humble me, though, where I realize, like, wow, I need God. I have to have God.
Well, that's what always leads me back to God.
Yeah.
Always.
Absolutely, because I have tried my very best to be better.
Yeah, I just don't got it in me. Yeah.
And I get it that I can't make me that person.
Yeah.
But I can't excuse the bad behavior either. I have to be awake and aware enough to it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is my responsibility.
Yeah.
I can't excuse it.
Mike L., he shares this story about him and Don P. were out fishing, and he said that he asked Don, he was like, man, what is it? Why do I keep doing this? Right? Why do I keep coming up short with this stuff? And Don said, we're out here fishing and enjoying the day. Right? He said, it's a catch or release. It ain't about what fish we're catching. Right? He said, it's the relationships, the time we get to spend with each other out here. Like, wow.
Yeah.
It's like, I keep coming up short, and that's how me and God get close. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And all of it is in there, our very best stuff and our very least best stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all in there. I'm not trying to say false humility here. I'm just saying the whole spectrum. Maybe we're always on a spectrum for everything.
Yeah.
The whole spectrum is there. And I forget to rely on God.
Yeah.
Definitely.
As the great healer, heal me that I might help others. Heal me. I'm not the bringer of grace without God's grace.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, it's easy to confuse the message with the messenger. And I'm grateful that, we talked about attraction, not promotion. Well, we don't do even a seeking of attraction without it being something that my ego wants.
Yeah. Don used to say, ego gets me on the plane.
Yeah.
Yep. And I think pride is the same way. Pride gets a bad rap, but pride is what gets you dressed in the morning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny because I was just
Gets
sharing.
you showering.
That's funny. I was just sharing earlier. It's funny how, like, in recovery, it's like they were like, look, y'all, we're just going to keep messing stuff up. We're going to continue coming up short. We're going to continue doing this, you know what I mean? So, like, if you're in recovery, it's all used for his good, right? And, like, hopefully if you're actually in a recovery process, and he'll use it to just change and transform you in whatever way, right? And And hopefully it's like what we're talking about in a humility side, where we're putting God's ambitions above our own, right? And if you're not in a recovery process, though, it's just going to be, just a continuous cycle of, harms or just, all kinds of damage, right?
Right.
Well, I think it can be that way even in recovery.
Yeah.
That's why that 10 and 11 step are so important, because I'm always going to cause some commotion, out there in the world or in my life, in my family, because I'm human,
I'm aware of it, yeah.
and I fall asleep all the time.
Yeah.
I fall asleep all the time and don't even realize what I'm up to until all of a sudden it's like, oh my Lord, what in the world did I do? Why did I do that? Why did I say that?
Yeah.
And all of that just brings me back to God.
That's what I'm saying.
And developing a deeper relationship with God, which is what this is all about.
Yeah.
All about.
Yeah. It's just about relationship.
I need that program called On and On and On someday. When I find myself dominating a conversation because I think I've got so much I needed to share, or, the point is, I guess, that we're never cookie cutters on this personal spiritual journey. The soul has its own unique journey, but we do it with the likeness of each other.
I like that.
Wow.
And we each draw strengths from that. I do, don't you?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Yep. I think we're all teachers. We all teach each other, and I mean, that's just the way it is, and I think that's the way we're meant to be.
Yeah.
And that means we're all students too.
Always. Yes.
Yeah. Wow.
So what I get to avoid is, but this time is different. Which is the big check me out of this. I don't want to play. And we find a way to love something in each person.
Oh, absolutely.
Well,
absolutely.
Thank God.
Yeah, definitely. Can I look for our differences as something that is good? Can I rather than focusing on differences as being bad, can I focus on differences as being good?
Wow.
And appreciate that, and let God guide me no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That's beautiful. I'm so glad to do this with you, Judy.
Yeah, it's been great.
I think this is a blast. Thanks, Paul.
Yeah. What I'd like to do is at the beginning of the year, I'd like to do some step stuff with all the three of us. Maybe we go through some steps. Yeah.
Be fun.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
it'd be fun. We both use the same book, and Soul's journey is their own.
Yeah.
And we live in a society constantly ready for war and conflict. and we fizz around with all the stuff that's going on, and yet in AA we can have so much more freedom from all that stuff.
Thank God.
I think so. Yeah. Definitely.
Thank God. Yeah. All right. Well, is there anything else y'all want to finish off with?
Not me. I'm good.
Not
I've
either.
enjoyed it.
Say thank you. This was great fun. Thanks, Juanita. Lovely.
Yeah. Thank you, Judy. I love you, my friend, and thank you, Paul, for this.
Thank y'all. And I will be staying in touch with y'all.
Okay.
Be well and good night.
Have a wonderful night.
Thank you, Paul. Good night.
Hello. Thank you for listening to 3 Legacies Recovery Recordings. If you enjoy our program, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to share with a friend. We're also self-supporting, so feel free to contribute to the channel through Venmo at Recovery Recordings 615. Please note that the views expressed on this podcast are solely our individual views and do not represent any official stance of any 12-step program. We are not affiliated with any specific recovery organization, and this content should not be considered as professional advice for alcoholism or addiction.